Turbo building literally made comp and like controller comp a thing.
Hey, what's up guys, it's BH.Alonzo, and basically I'm going to be explaining a little bit about the new update and why Epic decided to add this. Now, there's a lot of reasons why Epic decided to add the delay to turbo building. Now, first things first, before you go straight at Epic and decide to totally bash them for what they're doing, there's a heavy influence beside this. First things first, one of the first influences, if we go back to Season 7, we can take a look at how there was an extreme demand to go back to Season 2 and have Dusty Depot and all these things from Season 2. Now, one of those things that was at the default for building was the turbo build delay. Now that Epic actually decided to add this, this is going to create a much larger backlash than it would have in Season 7. So moving on to the second reason why Epic decided to add this is probably the biggest and the number one reason why they decided to add this. Now, if you think about it, here's the part that we probably aren't completely aware of. Pro players and content creators are not the only ones playing the game, and there are a large majority of players that are actually really bad, which is also one of the reasons why they added it, appealing to the bots. Now, if you really think about this, this update should have been done a long time ago if they were going to get this over with. But it just goes to say that Epic is trying to attempt to follow the community and what they say, but they're doing it in all the wrong ways. Now moving on to the third and final reason why Epic decided to add this into the game, and this is the part that no one else knows. There is a very large marketing technique that is being added into Season X. And so far, it's working. Epic has been getting a lot more attention than they usually do, and it's of course not for the right reasons, but they are pulling a lot more numbers just because of it. In the sense of maybe not players actually playing it at the moment, but I mean articles, videos, and just attention across the social media for what they're doing. The first thing that they added was the mechs. The reason I know this is because Epic hasn't removed this. It's obvious that they like the attention, and in fact, they almost teased it in the recent trailer for the Junk Rift. They used the mech because it was obvious. They're fully aware that the community would not like this. They hate any kind of counter weapon or counter structure that can actually protect you from one shot. We saw that in the last game with Ballers, and now we see it again, but this time it's something that was, in a way, it was almost trolled. But obviously to the community it looks like a joke because of the fact that it was so obvious that Epic knew that the community would hate this. It would be something that would get a huge backlash, and that's something they wanted because they wanted the most attention right now. Now, here's another thing that none of us are really taking into factor. This has happened before. In a smaller scale, but this has happened before. They've took it out, and they made it better. Always. Epic, they keep it for the temporary attention, and they draw it back. This is also a marketing technique. If you look at some of the most popular games out there right now, the community and the actual game industry are very, very connected. They love each other. The community is always contributing ideas, and the industry is taking that into factor. But because of this is just like you're never happy if you're rich kind of thing. If you have everything you want in the game, there's nothing to add to it. So Epic counters this by adding things that we don't want, so it can get more attention. So when we do actually get something we want, we enjoy it way more than if we were to only get what we want. And obviously, Epic, I'm sorry to say, Epic isn't stupid. They're actually one of the smartest industries I've ever seen, and they have kept their game going for a really, really long time. That is because they are taking full force for these new updates that are destroying their reputation, but at the same time, they're pulling numbers like crazy. But obviously, going into a normal standpoint, they're probably going to pull these back, and they're going to remove the mechs, and they're going to remove the delay time for turbo building, all because this cannot continue for their biggest influences, because their biggest influences are one of the, if not the biggest reason why Epic is still here, because those streamers are still there. The reason why Apex got so big was because of the fact that the streamers went over to it and it started pulling more attention. And I'm not gonna lie, I went to it too just to see how it was. Of course, it wasn't the same as Fortnite because it felt too balanced. When there's something unbalanced, then you have something to complain about. And if you have something to complain about, there's articles, there's videos on it, there's more content being produced about it. If the game is always balanced, then you feel content. And when you feel content, it's only for a little bit of time before you actually get bored of the same thing over and over. That's why updates have to be done as fast as possible, and adding things to just make it better over and over and over, that will just make things a lot harder for new people to come into the game and try it out. That's why we have had consistent numbers for a really, really long time coming into the actual game of Fortnite. Now I'm going to explain why this should not have been added. Now, Epic is smart for what they do. They do add all these things, and it is actually getting attention. But the thing with this, though, is this is messing with other creators' content. Content creators that do free building for their main actual uploads. And I know a lot of people, even on BH, that rely on free building for their videos, and taking this away is going to completely remove the ability to actually produce that kind of content. And when you actually remove this, it's temporarily closing off almost all content for those content creators, which is actually going to be ruining their sub counts potentially, and just messing with a lot of things that they shouldn't have in the first place. And I know for a fact this is going to be removed at some point just because they can't lose all their following, and this has the potential to remove their biggest influences. Maybe not those smaller average players, but their biggest influences that do this kind of stuff, that rely on building so heavily. This is going to be a huge drop down, and actually this is going to create a backlash. And before, I was okay with the fact that they added some other things previously, removing some things. They did this with weapons previously, and they did this with gliders, they did this with Siphon. They basically did this with a lot of things. But this is the first time that they ever went far enough to actually mess with other creators' content. So to counter this, a lot of these creators are actually going to go and move to other games. I had predicted this way earlier on because I know they are messing with how far they can push themselves to create more exposure for themselves. They started with mechs and they didn't lose following. They stayed at a consistent number. People continued to play the game, but they never actually had been punished for moving or pressing so hard and playing with their actual community itself. So I think, but the thing is with this update, I think for the first time we might actually see a backlash that will shake Epic for the first time. And if not, I feel like it's necessary to do so because they will continue to see how far they can push before they start losing numbers. Once they start losing numbers, they're going to actually bring it back and do what they can to fix the game as best as they can. But for the time being, if we don't do anything, they're going to keep this in the game until we have stopped posting, giving Epic the attention that they wanted from the start with this update. Now, the best thing I could say right now for those content creators that want to produce content but can't because of this update, I'd say the best thing you can do right now is finding something else to create content for. Whether that be a new game or just finding a new way to play Fortnite completely, that will be necessary because that's going to change the way the community completely views this. And if Epic starts losing numbers, they're going to have to change this back. Now, there was a few big streamers that had actually started having a little bit of a backlash by just quitting Fortnite temporarily until they removed the mechs, which actually resulted in Epic changing the way mechs actually are used in the game. And we've seen this already in a lot of the things that Epic has already added into the game. Specifically, one of the biggest things that we can remember that was very memorable was the glider redeploy. They had added it in, and then they removed it a little bit after as a test, but also for the marketing technique. And they added it back in, of course, because there was a large demand for it, but there was also a point where they started losing numbers very slightly. So if you do hate this new update and you want to get rid of it as best as you can, the best thing I would do right now is share this with your friends. Let them know about what Epic is actually doing behind everyone's back, and just continue to produce content in a new way. And if that means moving to a new game, then I would say move most definitely to a new game, because Epic is pushing farther than they should have ever pushed. But and yeah, so thank you for watching, and I'll make sure to get back to you if any new information comes up. If you want, you can like the video, but I mean, you don't have to, you know.